Dear students, dear growers and dear listeners and those who is watching us today, this morning, good morning. I would like to greet you everyone this morning, and by using this opportunity I would like to congratulate you with our Republic Day that we have celebrated yesterday. Most of you know that first in whole East Azerbaijan Democratic Republic was established in 1918. Even so, it's lasted only 23 months. It has influenced the lives of the people. It has told to the whole world who we are and why we are here. So, let me introduce myself. My name is Fagan Agaev. I'm a teacher at the Department of Horticulture. Today I'm going to present to you a subject called olericulture. We'll talk about technology of growing tomato, pepper, eggplant, and cucumbers outdoor. Most of you many times heard that Azerbaijan is producing a lot of things what we are exporting and getting extra income. And most of you heard that agriculture is one of the major points of that source. But I would like to specially point the importance of vegetable growing amongst all the agriculture products, because you know the export of tomatoes and fruits and all the other crops, agriculturally grown crops, is benefiting our country by generating some surplus and income. So last years, specifically under the supervision of Mr. President and also Mr. Minister, and under the supervision of our rector, new and more educated people are finishing Agricultural State University, and they are covering those gaps that we have in agriculture sector today. And we hope that next years, with increased chances and increased available sources that we have today in ASAO, we will be able to, so to say, to produce more educated and more experienced people that will benefit and that will work for the benefit of our country. So, as I said, today we'll talk about biological characteristics and cultivation technology of tomato, cucumbers, peppers, and eggplant. Most of you already know that first stated tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants, that belongs to the Solanaceae family. We'll use, I have already used some sources, which is for those of you who are able to read in Azerbaijan and Russian languages, you can benefit from the sources of Manzar Mamedova and Mapuba Hasanova, also from Russian sources prepared by Andreev, and also some internet sources and references that you can find the information I have benefited while preparing this lecture for you. Let's start with tomato. The history of tomato is it's going to the early centuries, and it was known even 700 years before our century, and it's originated in South America. It was known by the people living there, we call them Aztecs, and to the Europe, this fruit, vegetable, came almost in 16th century. In the beginning, people in Europe, in Britain, for example, and in Italy, were afraid of this vegetable. They were saying that it is red and it is poisonous, and they were not happy to eat it. But time was going on, and soon all the cousins in Europe started to use tomato. As you can see, tomato belongs to the family Solanaceae and to species Solanum leucopersicum. Tomato fruits having different color. As you can see from the slide here, they could be black, yellow, red, etc. They may have also different shape and different size. They could be round and they could be prolonged. So all of these changes were possible as a result of the work of scientists in this sphere. Most of the tomatoes are divided in two main groups that are called indeterminate and determinate. Of course, we have also third group, which is in between, so the transition group. But the main varieties or hybrids that we are growing today in our fields is indeterminate is for protected ground facilities and determinate for open growing and for outdoor growing. You may have a question, what is the difference? It is visually shown on this slide for you that indeterminate varieties or hybrids, they are having in the end, they are not finishing with the brush or inflorescences. The determinate is finishing with the brush formed inflorescences in the end. So, due to this, it affects the height of the plant. Usually, indeterminate varieties or hybrids, they are taller, while determinate varieties or hybrids, they are shorter. If we look at the structure of the plant, also at the flower and at the fruit, we can see that tomato plant consists of roots, which is formed usually as a tap root, but I will tell about this within the next slides, but it also could be formed as a fibrous root. Tomato has stem, which is shown for you, and on these stems you can see the formed leaf, branches, and also the suckers. Compound leaf consists of the nodes, and the distance between the nodes is called internode. You can see it stated here. Flowers has both sexes in it, so tomato amongst those crops that can pollinate itself. If we look at the flower structure, you can see that in flower they have the stamen, pistil, and also ovary and ovule, where the future tomato is formed. More closer look is telling us that when pollen is formed, then pollination is happening, and the pollen is entering to the pistil and goes to the ovule, and in ovule there is pollination process is happening and fruit is formed. As you can see, the fruit consists from exocarp, so it's called an outer skin, and mesocarp, which is inner skin. Inside of the fruit is seed cameras where the seeds are placed. So seeds, you know, is a one way of generative propagation of plants. So plant under stressful conditions always tries to form the fruit and to finalize the formation of the seeds. As you seen in this slide, After 5-7 leaves, tomato plant, if it is an early variety, starts to form flower brushes and inflorescences. If we look at it more closer, you can see that flowers having the correct shape, and the calyx consists of 6 to 8 petals. You can see the petals here. And if you look at the picture of the flower, you can see if the petals are angles towards backside, then it means like this flower is ready to be pollinated. If you are going to pollinate it artificially, or if you are going to use bumblebees for pollination. So inflorescences is formed in determinate and indeterminate varieties and hybrids, but the placement of the first inflorescences is telling us if this is an early variety or if it is a late or mid-late variety. So if the inflorescences is placed and formed after 5-7 leaves, then this is an earlier variety that you are growing. If it is over, it formed when there is 8 to 9 leaves, then it is late varieties primarily. When we come to the root system, as I said, tomato has mainly taproot system, but tomato is a kind of crop that you can form, you can get roots from every part of the plant. So tomato amongst those plants that easily possible to propagate vegetatively, not just generatively from seeds. So by cutting any parts of the plant, you can get new roots, and you can plant new plant and get another harvest. So what is the difference? Primarily, if you are growing tomato from a seed, then you can see, you can get more formed, branched taproot system. But if you are going to grow tomato from different parts as a result of vegetative propagation, then mostly you are getting a fibrous kind of root system. Usually in both types of root system, roots are well branched, and root systems are placed in the top layer of the soil, which is like 25 to 30 centimeters. So while providing nutrients to the plant, you need to be able to keep that moist on the top layer, because you know, all of us know that roots are able to suck the nutrients if there is a humidity. So as I said earlier, tomato can be propagated by cutting every part. So you can cut the top apical part where you have this apical buds, or you can even cut from the mid size of the plant, or you can angle the plant and just put soil over it, and then you will get new roots from the nodes. So you can, after that, you can just carefully cut and divide that stem and place it in a new field. So it was very much known in the US and Europe, but last years it's also a very common practice in Azerbaijan to use the grafting tomatoes. What is the purpose for this? The purpose for using the grafting method, you know, most of us remember that usually grafting were done on fruit trees or any kind of trees. Primarily it was fruit trees, but in this case tomatoes, and same as cucumbers, we'll talk about that later, could be grafted. And the purpose of this, that you are getting healthy rootstock, which is very strong against diseases and pests, and also very productive in uptake of nutrients from the soil or any substrate where you are growing. But the top part is which called scion, is from the more productive varieties or hybrids, which is having higher yield, and you can get better fruits with a good shape and good color and good taste. The grafting method is now commonly used, and even last year, even last semester, we have also taught some of our students at our own greenhouses here at State University, Agriculture State University, how to graft different varieties of tomatoes, and we have got also very good results. Also last year we've been growing already grafted tomato plants that we have bought ready-made, and we have been able to produce very good yield and tasty tomatoes out of that. I have stated for you some tips while grafting, what you should have in mind while grafting your tomatoes. First of all, you should have the healthy rootstock. The rootstock should not have any poisonous, any disease. Otherwise, your future planned good yield will be under the attack, and you will not be able to get result as you were planning. So it should be remembered that two selected varieties should be genetically compatible in order to make them a good start. The size of the cuttings that you are using for grafting should be similar. You cannot take rootstock or scion with different size, then you will have a problem for the good connection. The next one is minimizing the chances for transmission of disease, because you know, while cutting and while grafting, you are using different equipment, specifically very sharp knives, and after each cut, these knives should be washed or should be put in disinfectant in order to have in order to minimize the disease transmission. Also, the cuttings should be horizontal, and they should be at least 5 centimeters before the cotyledons. Otherwise, again, the joining, the growing will be under the attack. So we should remember that after we have grafted two different varieties, we need to provide optimal temperature and humidity conditions for those plants. As you can see from the slide, it's recommendable that in the beginning, when we are maintaining this grafted tomatoes under the plastic, we should try to hold the relative humidity of 90%, relative humidity of air, and relative humidity of soil at least around 80%. Sunlight or lightning should be reduced by the shade cloth and to have not more than 50%. When it comes to the temperature, you know, temperature affects all the processes of that going on within the plants. So recommendable temperature during the day is from 18 to 21 degrees, and at night it should be kept more down from 16 to 18 degrees. With these optimal conditions, you need to have the grafted tomatoes for at least 5 to 7 days on the first stage. Watering is necessary to be provided only from the bottom. You cannot water it from the top because the water drops can go into the place where a rootstock and scion is joining and can affect the growth of the new grafted plant. On the next stage, we need to reduce the humidity down to 50%. If you can see, in the beginning it was 90, now we're going to 50%, but we keep the temperature same as before for the day and for the night. And this will be second stage of the development of the grafted vegetable, tomato in our case. So watering still will be provided in the bottom. After this, when we already have 10 to 15 days of period and these two stages has passed, then we can slowly move them and move them to the ordinary places where we grow other seedlings and can continue growing there. We should remember that because we have used very strong rootstock, it's possible that side roots or it can be developed from the rootstock, and the growers should be carefully removing that side roots and suckers in order to let the top part of the plant to grow much better and quicker. As I said, the seeds of tomato is formed in the fruits, and seeds has almost same color and size, but they are mostly used for production of seedlings. You remember that I have been talked about. What I would like to point for you here, the terminal or apical bud in indeterminate hybrids is very quick growing and intended to grow much rapidly, while on determinant plants, after some certain level, it stops its growth, so that results in smaller size plants for determinant plants, which is around 120, 150 meters, so 120, 150 centimeters tall, while indeterminate varieties can continue its growth and even grow around 9 meters. In our case, we always use tomatoes as annual plant, but there are some facts that in nature tomatoes can be biennial plants, and also even more than 2 years can survive and live. So tomato leaf structure is, as you can see, leaves are placed on petiole, and tomato has a non-paired number of leaves, and the top leaf is calling terminal leaflet is always longer and big in size than the other intercalary leaves and also primary leaflets. As you can see, intercalary leaflets, they are mostly in a smaller size, and while talking about leaves, we should state that pruning of the tomato plant should be done very carefully. You cannot remove tomato leaves while pruning more than 2 or 3 leaves at once. So you should do it primarily in the beginning of the day, so to let the tomato to cover that places where that openings that you have in the stem after the cutting the leaves. And you should remember that I'm visiting different farms and growers, and sometimes I very much upset when I see how they cut the leaves and how how they do it wrongly, because some of them is just while they trimming it, they're just pulling it down, and they make very big openings on the stem. That is the place where disease and insects can get inside and affect or infect the plant in the future. So all the scissors, all the knives that you are using should be always washed or dropped into the liquid fungicide, so in order to reduce the effect of that openings. The leaves, as I said, of the tomato is unpaired, alternate, and consist of several pairs. The colors may change from the dark green to a bit light green, but that depends on varieties and hybrids. Also, I will talk about this later, some of the farmers are mixing the change of the color with the disease, but that could be also the effect of the used nutrients and amounts of nutrients that plant is benefiting from. As I said, tomatoes are a plant that mostly grown in the open fields and also in the protected ground by production of seedlings. By use of seedlings, you can reduce the production period of your tomatoes outdoor. So what most of our growers is doing, they are growing seedlings from the seeds, then they're picking if they are planted in boxes or in some substrates. But usually, last years, our farmers and growers, they use specific, as you can see, specific boxes where you can fill the necessary amount of soil mixture that you can prepare yourself, or peat moss, or different cocoa beets, etc. The role of those substrates is just to keep the humidity for the roots, and also to provide the basic energy, basic nutrients and humidity for the seed for germination. After that, you still need to provide different amounts of nutrients and water the plants. Again, I would like to mention this. In most of the places, I see that farmers and growers who is involved in seedling production, they irrigate their water their plants from the top, which is not correct. You should try to use the bottom irrigation, or because after the irrigation from the top of the plant, you still is having drops of the water on the leaves, and the sun is hitting them and burning the plants, and also that stays in the nodes and buds, and also in the leaves and flowers of the plant, and that also becomes a place where insects and also disease can be starting their own activity. In some of the farms where we are going, we sometimes see the seedlings that is overgrown. This happens due to different factors. It happens that farmer has no reliable weather condition outside if he wants to plant his seedlings outside, and he needs to wait inside with his produced seedlings, and during that period he needs to feed and he needs to irrigate the plants, and in combination with the sunlight the plants is growing very much and becoming tall, which is affecting the future transporting and also transplanting of the plant. And usually these plants are forming the first fruit branches very high from the top surface, which is not good because it is affecting the total yield that this plant can produce. So the necessary stage of seedling transplanting in the open ground is when the seedling has 5 to 7 leaves, and also flower buds start to be formed. It's usually this stage, or maximum is this stage. For me, preferably, is this stage is much better. But you should remember that physically removing of the plants and planting them outdoor as early as possible does not mean that you will get the quick results or better yield, because you need also the optimal temperature conditions on the soil and in the air, and also humidity of the soil and air, in order for your plant to grow well. In this table you can see, now I will talk to you about the tomato, but further on we'll talk also about cucumber, pepper, and the eggplant. And as you can see from this table, different plants need different air and soil moisture at the different stages of development. If we look at the tomato, on the seedling stage, tomato requirements for the soil is 70 to 75% relative humidity, while air humidity should be around 60 to 65%. If you remember, humidity of the soil is very much important, because that plays not last but least role in uptake of the intake and uptake of the nutrients that we are providing to the plants. So what is requirements for soil, water, and nutrient demands for the tomato? Tomato is in favor of the slightly acidic soil, which is having pH level of 5.5 to 6.5, and it is very favorable condition if it is having the sandy or light loam soils, because if the loam presence in the soil is too much, then the water that we are providing with the nutrients for the plant will mostly stay on the top surface, very close to the root system, and will extract the oxygen, which will badly affect the plant growth. So primarily in the greenhouses and also in open field, last years more and more people started to use drip irrigation systems. For the growing season, the number stated here, it's tomato requires 400 to 800 millimeters of water or rain, but these figures may change, reduce or increase, because due to heat and increased temperature that you will have outdoors, because we are not able to control the outdoor temperature and can control the amount of water that we are using. Another specific issue that our growers are not care of is the water quality. Specifically, this affects the growth of the plants in the protected ground when you are preparing the nutrient solution and you are adding fertilizers into the water and providing the fertigation of the plants. Because if you are having the higher EC of the water, then the mix that you are prepared, it's not easily absorbed and taken in by the plant. So it's less effectively used by the plant for formation of its generative and vegetative parts. So irrigation should be regulated, mostly in open fields or outdoors. Some of the farmers still are using furrow irrigation, but tomato is a plant that does not like so much furrow irrigation, and specifically, you know, last years we are very much struggling with rains and available water for irrigation, so we should use as much as possible new systems like irrigation systems in order to reduce the consumption of the irrigation water. Salinity of the water, of course, affects the nutrient solutions that you are going to provide via the drip irrigation system, and also it reduces the yield of the plant. Weights of the fruits is reducing, and shape and color can be affected. So tomato is heat-loving plant, and we usually, all the growers, when we talk with them, they say tomatoes loving the water, they need the water. But we should remember that the need in the watering and need in the relative humidity for the tomato is also varies. It is increases in the beginning at the seedling stage, then it reduces, then it's going up when the fruits are formed and they are ripening and increasing in size. So because of that, you need to regulate the irrigation water amount. Seeds of the tomato germinating at the temperature of 24 to 26 degrees. At temperatures below 10 degrees, they are not germinating. If you are lowering temperature of after emergence of the seeds, tomato seeds, down to 18 to 20 degrees at day, and then more down at the night to 14 to 15 degrees, then the growth is going normally and optimal. Temperatures over 32 to 35 degrees is negatively affecting the growth of the plant, because all the processes of nutrient movement and also transpiration and also pollination processes and formation of fruit is becoming under the effect of the high temperatures. It is not recommendable, of course, to have temperatures below 14 degrees, so it is advised for the growers in a protected ground to keep always the temperature over 15-16 degrees, but in an open ground, sometimes you are not able to control that temperature during the nights, so due to that, you need to use specific anti-stress fertilizers in order to make your plant much stronger. Tomato is a light demanding plant, and it needs light as much as possible, let me say 12 to 16 hours per day, but intensity of light should not be below the 3000 luxes, and optimal need of the light intensity is around 5 to 8000 luxes. Planting schemes of tomatoes in an open ground for early and mid-early varieties is 70 to 35 and 70 to 30 centimeters. For late varieties is usually commonly used 70 to 50 planting schemes. When we come to the fertilizer and nutrient amount, we should remember that tomatoes take a lot of, requires a lot of fertilizer while we are planning the yield from hectare. So just briefly, I have prepared and presenting to you the average fertilizer amounts of macro elements, nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, that is necessary for the production of 130 tons of tomatoes per hectare, or 210 tons of yield per hectare. Of course, this amounts of fertilizers will be very much affected by the amount of fertilizers that you have in your soil. So for all growers and agronomists, it's recommendable before the appliance of fertilizers to test their soil and to see how much they have fertilizers in their available soil. As a result of some interactions with irrigation or with nutrition, sometimes we see some cracks or some change in color on the fruits and leaves of the plants. So this is just a few examples how the irregular irrigation is affecting the plant tomato fruits, and this cracks is a good start for the disease and insects to affect the plant. Also the effect of not correct appliance of macroelements and microelements is clearly visible, first in the leaves and lately in the fruits of the plant. As you can see here, phosphorus is changing the color and make it more violet. Potassium is yellowing the sides of the leaves. The minimum amount of iron is yellowing, etc. So our agronomists or growers and farmers should not be always concentrated that this is a disease. They should be very carefully watching and very carefully seeing the change that is affecting the plant. Also, this is a table where I want to share with you the uptake of macro and micro elements based on the soil pH. And as you can see here, the most of the macro elements is, in case of tomato, within a range of 5.5 to 6.5, is very good absorbed and uptake is very high, as you can see. But if it is going to alkalinity, then it reduces, and more salinity it reduces. Same with the micro elements used. Primarily, fertilization could be done by provision of fertigation via the drip irrigation lines through the root system, and also it is possible to do the foliar spraying of the plant in order to provide microelements to the plant. So for the open ground, we have international hybrids of tomato, that is Sultan, Cherry Lady, Benito, Ricci, Sunrise, and also local varieties that has been developed different years by the different institutions, which names it Leila, Azerbaijan 94, Zarabi, Zafar, Elim, and others. Last years, the Scientific Research Institute of Vegetable Production, they have started to produce the local seeds of local varieties and also hybrids, which is very productive, and it is recommendable for our growers to purchase it and try to get an information. So time is moving, and I'm slowly jumping to the pepper and eggplant. They are also belong to the family of Solanaceae, and pepper has a species name called Capsicum annum, while eggplant belongs to the species of Solanum melongena. As you can see from the pictures, the shape, size, and color of these two plants is also different. You can see the black, yellow, green, red varieties within these plants. If when we talk about the history of these plants, the peppers originated with Central and South America, while eggplant, or aubergine is also called, is originated from India and West China. Up to 1500 years ago, it was not known, and lately it was brought to Europe by Arabics and Persians, also to Africa. The morphology of the bell pepper, which is very commonly used, is plant is also consists from the root system and also having stem with flowers and nodes and internodes. Seeds are formed and placed inside the fruit, and flowers has both, as I said earlier, with tomatoes has both sexes and can pollinate itself. As you can see, seeds are very good source for generative propagation, and it's mostly used for a production of new hybrids if it is varieties. So the planting schemes of the pepper is recommended planting schemes is 70 to 20, 70 to 30, 60 to 30, and 50 to 30 centimeters. By the end of the season, the root system is very much grown, and it's placed in the top surface of the soil and placed mostly, it's very well branched, and it's mostly present in the top surface of 20 to 30 centimeters. Peppers has a taproot system, which is very much endured during the transplantation. Flowers of the pepper has stems, and also it is a self-pollinating plant, which is specifically, our growers should remember, the pollination may happen only within this temperature range of 16 to 24 degrees. Pollination could happen also without use of bees, and can be done naturally. So pepper is high water demanding crop, and it needs around 2,000 millimeters of rain. It requires a pH level of from 5.5 to 6. I would state that most of the Solanum family, Solanaceae family plants, tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers, and also other plants like potato, they are very much like this pH range. So, and this table that I have shown for uptake of the macro and micronutrients is also same for all the Solanaceae family plants. Peppers and as eggplants, they are requiring the huge amount of manure and organic matter in the soil, but soil that we are going to use under the plants like peppers and eggplant should have good structure and water holding capacity. Again, I'm just repeating this, both peppers and eggplants does not like very much furrow irrigation. It's better to provide more irrigation at once instead of having continuous flooding of the water. Of course, these plants are very much demandable requiring very much potassium, and also magnesium is important. And here is stated the amounts of magnesium for the plant and also potassium. But plants uptake the nitrogen if there is enough, these plants, if there is enough potassium in the soil provided. Varieties and hybrids are available today in the market is for foreign companies is Baron, Antebellum, Inferno, Melissa, while locals is Gögöl, Cardinal, Zumrud, Murat, and Yadigar could be stated. When we talk about the eggplant, as I said, it has different color and shape. It is, as a pepper, it is heat-loving plant. Eggplant is a perennial plant, and eggplant grows, different varieties may grow up to 150 centimeters tall. They have leaves that is growing very long, which is 10 to 20 centimeters, and wide to 5 to 10 centimeters. Roots, stem, and leaves is presented for you. Seeds again formed in fruits, and this is also the self-pollinating plant, and you don't need to artificially pollinate the eggplant. Eggplant, as all the previous plants, also have a taproot system, well-branched system, but eggplant roots can go very deep and be going down to even 1.5 meter deep. But the top branched level of the root system is placed in the zone of 45 to 50 centimeters. So fertilization is similar to the pepper. It also high water demandable plant, and the soil pH range is also 5.5 to 6. But you should remember that eggplant is very demandable to the nutrients, and it takes out with itself per 1 kilogram of products produced 4 grams of nitrogen, 1.3 grams of phosphorus, and 5.5 grams of potassium. So while planning the future yield, we need to have this in mind if this plant was planted year before, or while doing the soil tests. Eggplant is very demandable to microelements, to those like boron, molybdenum, copper, iron, manganese, and magnesium. The suggested yields, fertilization yields, is for getting 40 tons per hectare is nitrogen 100 kilogram, phosphorus 60, and potassium 0. Also, the moisture level should be around 80 to 90%. If accordingly we are going to increase the productivity and yield, then we should accordingly increase the nutrition amount of fertilizers. As you can see, even from the stated numbers, eggplant is very demandable to phosphorus and nitrogen, while potassium is in low range. So before planting, you need to do the winter plowing and also to provide organic fertilizers, 40 to 50 tons per hectare. Also, potassium fertilizers should be 50 to 70% of phosphoric fertilizers, and 40 to 50% of potassium fertilizers should be provided up front during the winter plowing. I have already talked about this table. Here just want to state that pepper and eggplant during the seedling stage. These two plants also more commonly in production by use of seedlings, by use of transplants. And as you can see, again, the soil and the air moisture is changing, and our growers should be in charge of this. Varieties of available today in the market is Black Bell, Night Shadow, Fairy Tale, and also local varieties is Ganja, Billur, Turkan, Anamur, etc. So briefly in the end, I would like to talk to you about the cucumber, which is presenting another family, Cucurbitaceae, and the species Cucumis sativus. It's originated in India and was known almost 3,000 years ago. Even in some historical documents we can get an information about cucumbers within the Rome Empire and within the Greeks. Cucumber plant, it differs from other plants that it has very well-developed tendrils that is helping the plant to attach to this different parts of the trees in nature, and also in the cultivation lands, just lay in the ground or fixed to different constructions. This plant, compared to the three previous plants, has different flowers. They have male flowers and female flowers, and so both sexes is not presented in one flower, so the flowers are different. So self-pollination is very difficult, and you need to. It's good to pollinate it artificially or by use of bumblebees. As you can see, the difference with male flower and female flower, that female flower is forming the new fruit underneath, while male flower is just connected to the stem. Also, today is available parthenocarpic varieties where formation of the fruit is happening without pollination. This is how the flowers are looking. So flowers have 5 petals. You can see it here. And as I said, the female flower has a budding fruit in the end. That is where fruit is formed. Also, root system of cucumber is also having a taproot system. It can go to 1.5 meter deep, but as you can see also here, it's well branched in the top surface of 25, 30 to 40 centimeters. Requirement of the cucumber to the soil pH is around 6 to 6.8, but it can also tolerate within a pH of 5.5. When the pH is too low, then you need to provide calcinic limestone and get a necessary amount. Here is presented for you an information how much pH do you have in the soil and how much lime mass you need to provide in tons if you have sandy loam or silty loam or clay loam soils in your available for your growing. So as you can see, as much we are going to the clay loam soil, then more we are using in order to stabilize and get the necessary pH of the soil. Basic, you need to remember that for formation of the 1 ton of the cucumber fruits, plant removes around from 800 to 1.3 thousand grams of nitrogen, also phosphorus and potassium. So basic fertilizers prior to planting need to be provided in amounts of superphosphate with 250 kilogram per hectare, also potassium and magnesium sulfate. After that, you need to provide, in this table it's stated, the total recommended amounts per your plant production. As you can see, the total recommended amount should be provided not at once, but it should be divided in 3 different stages of development. If we talk about, let's say, total recommended nitrogen amount, it should be divided on 60 kg for the pre-plant period, 30 for band place, and also the 30 for side dress when fertigation and etc. is happening. Of course, I'm just reminding it again, all these numbers are average and tentative. You need to test your soil. So here's some information. I would like just in the end tell that cucumber also produced by the seedlings, and also you can do it by direct sowing. If the humidity in the top layer of the soil is less, lower, then you can plant it to the tree to the 4 or 5 centimeters deep. Also, for 100 square meter area, you need to use around 40 to 60 grams of seeds. Planting schemes is 50 to 40, or within the spacing or between the lines of 60 to 70. For the early varieties and for late maturing is 70 to 90 centimeters. Available varieties in the market today is Marsha, Malini, Great Caesar, and local varieties Ganjar, Shahriyar, Lankaran, and Azeri. So thank you for your attention.